Let's say you make a shirt. You physically plant the cotton into the ground, you tend to the cotton all through the process of its growth, then you pick the ball from the stalk and separate the seeds from the ball, then you do everything that needs to be done to turn that cotton into a shirt. You mine the minerals from the ground and create the chemicals needed to get the cotton to clump up in a shirt-like consistency, sewing the patches together, etc. You have created this shirt from start to finish. There is no ambiguity as to whose labor resulted in the creation of that shirt. Do you now own this shirt? Well, if you're Robinson Crusoe, the idea of ownership doesn't have much meaning. If there are a bunch of people around you, however, then you can use that shirt to the extent that others will let you use it, that they won't rip it off your back. If they don't believe that you own that shirt for whatever reason, and the mob rips the shirt off your back, then practically speaking, you do not own that shirt. There's no objective ownership. When you make a shirt, it doesn't then physically attach to your body. And that would only matter if people around you agreed that you owned the body the brain associated with your subjective perception is attached to. All ownership is based on an intersubjective consensus. What I mean by intersubjective consensus is just that. Subjective, what each subject, in this case a person, thinks. Inter, relating to each other. Intersubjective, what people think about something in relation to each other. Consensus, something agreed upon, not to be confused with voted upon. It can be voted upon if people believe that the voting makes something legitimate. I do not mean subjective consensus, as that could mean 5 communists in a city of 1 million people having a different belief about what constitutes ownership. Even if those 5 people don't like the private property arrangements of that city, they recognize and respect private property because private property is overwhelmingly supported in that city. It is the intersubjective consensus. And inter means in relation to the other relevant subjects, whoever those might be, and some people are more relevant than others. Sure, the 5 communists have a consensus of communal ownership, but they have to deal with the rest of the city, so they must consent to the property arrangements of everyone else in the city if they want to get along. If those 5 communists moved into an uninhabited area, and this area was not claimed by a state, then the intersubjective consensus in that area, as it pertained to property ownership, would in fact be communistic, whatever the specifics of that are. That the people living in the city have a different consensus as to what constitutes ownership is immaterial to these communists now, and does not intrude on the intersubjective consensus of the now free 5 communists. The intersubjective consensus is not something I am advocating. It is just a description. Intersubjective consensus is a term I use to describe reality. Of course, there is no actual intersubjective consensus in the singular any more than there is a forest or herd of buffalo in the singular. There are trees, buffalo, and individual actions and agreements, and like a forest or herd, intersubjective consensus is just a conceptual box. When you buy something from 7-Eleven, why is it then agreed that you own that which you bought? When you buy the slushie, does the material nature of the slushie change? No, but when you give the cashier the requested funny money, it is then perceived that you own that slushie. Land works the same way. You own your home because the relevant subjects around you agree that you do. It is the intersubjective consensus that you own that home that the land is on. Ownership for a home works no differently than the ownership of the shirt on your back. This is a very basic outline of the intersubjective consensus as it pertains to ownership. Typically, people refer to statements of various institutions to determine ownership. For example, in the territories of the western United States before those areas became incorporated, the settlers formed claims associations. They would decide upon what exactly constituted ownership of land. They may decide that farming an area for 6 months within any 12-month period constitutes ownership of any plot of land. Leaving a field fallow for a period of longer than 6 months within any 12-month period will result in the forfeiture of that land to whoever proceeds to cultivate instead. Squatter's law. Thus, the dictates of the claims association becomes the criteria of ownership agreed upon by the people in that area. They could agree upon an election to determine ownership if they wanted to. That becomes the intersubjective consensus of property ownership. Some person may decide he does not like this arrangement, but he will have to contend with his neighbor's belief that the dictates of the association are legitimate. which is to say he will have to go up against the intersubjective consensus in that area. And this is not very fun at all. But one may say, isn't this just a small state? No, not in the slightest.